Hey there gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and this is my brutally honest review for Hell Is Us, because I just finished the game. I've played about 30 hours of it, and this is by far the hardest game in all of 2025. I mean, straight up. But it's also not your typical style of difficulty, because on this channel, when we talk about stuff being tough, normally it means, hey, there's bosses that have so much health, or weapons are weak, or dodge rolling is difficult. But in this case, the real challenge of Hell Is Us is the fact that it never really tells you what you're supposed to do. Like, this is not a game that has maps. It doesn't have quest markers. It doesn't have the standard stuff that says, hey, go from A to B to C. Instead, Hell Is Us, it trusts you to figure it out. Now, in this game, we're playing as a guy called Rémi. He was originally born in this country of Haiti. But when he was 5 years old, he got smuggled out right as a complete bloodbath civil war has really kicked off. And now, decades later, he's sneaking back into this isolated country where, at this point, 99% of the population is just dead. But it's also worse than that, because during the course of brother against brother, blown out battlefields and terrible, terrible carnage, monsters also showed up. So Rémi coming back, he's trying to find if anybody in his family has survived, but also just the fact that where did these monsters come from, and can they be put back? Now, I have to say that the mystery at the heart of Hell Is Us, the story itself, for me, didn't really work that well. But you unfortunately really have to pay attention to it, because since there isn't a typical quest log, since there isn't your standard style of, hey, go here, do this, you really got to be aware of what every person says, what every scrap of paper says, what every single random graffiti says, because each of it might end up being an incredibly crucial clue that you didn't figure out. But let me break down all the goods and bads. If you could, please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, I want to break this into three separate chunks. Let's talk about the gameplay first and really focus on the combat. Then we're going to talk about the story and why I feel like it doesn't completely work. And then this world, because I almost feel like Hell Is Us has a chance to really kind of go down into the records books as a game that dared to be drastically different, for better and for worse. But let's start with that combat, right? So a lot of Souls likes, they like to have those heavy hits, those times to try and land a combo, to switch weapons, to have dual axes or heavy swords or partisans and stuff, and to actually try to fight against unknowable beasties. But what makes the combat so incredibly fun in this is that since it's modern day, you have a drone. Like in this, your weapons can be upgraded and imbued with different magic so they can stun or eat extra health or do ice attacks and stuff like that. But you also have a drone that can be equipped with special attacks. Attacks that will stun foes, that will do charge attacks, that'll do you, make it so you can just blender a group of people. I like the fact that, honestly, there's a heavy amount of customization in this that at the start feels a bit too much. When you first start playing Hell Is Us, the first few chapters are so easy, you kind of think, am I too strong? Do I have too many mechanics? But the further into this game you goes, each chapter is legitimately double as hard, and it gets exponentially more difficult. So you end up relying on those practice skills more and more and more. But what you need to practice the most is the consumption system. So the way this works is that whenever you're fighting, you have a strong attack and a fast attack. Now, unfortunately, you can't really combo it. Basically, you can only do combos of the fast attack. Square, 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 right? Triangle can be a big charge hit, but you can't really do like fast, fast, strong. You actually basically have to do one or the other. So what this does, though, is at the end of any combo, whether it is strong or fast, you can press R1 when this big ring of magic appears around you, this white hula hoop, and you'll absorb that amount of health. Now, this is incredibly mandatory. This is not optional, because healing items are incredibly scarce. You need to constantly be eating enemies or else you're dead as hell. But also, the other reason this is so incredibly brutal in a lot of ways is that your health and your stamina are connected. Now, I think this is an interesting idea on paper, but man, does it make fights incredibly frustrating at times, because as you get weaker, you can't hit as much, which means you can't eat as much. So it makes this terrible dichotomy where in a lot of ways, you end up having to try to find weak targets eat them, top off your health, and then go for the bigger, badder baddies. But what makes this extra difficult is that a lot of enemies can't just be instantly hit. There are a lot of different styles of foe in this, a lot of different monsters that will do their own style of magic, crazy ranged attacks, or sometimes just really mod you. You'll have like huge, giant groups of tons and tons of weak guys you gotta just really try to cut down before they swarm you. But what's really the hardest of the hard is the twins. So there are these people that have a weird thing called the haze. They have basically this big like cloud that comes out of them. That's their actual soul. You have to kill the haze in order to kill them. Now, in big groups, thankfully, a lot of times if there's multiple haze enemies at once, they're only putting out one haze. They're not having to fight. Like if there's 5 guys that are all haze, thankfully you don't have to fight 10 enemies. Technically, you're just fighting 6 enemies. You kill the soul of that one haze, it breaks the magic for all of them. But this system is so incredibly difficult because in a lot of ways, I like that while you're exploring, these enemies are so tough, but it always feels so fun to get to that new area and start trying to learn that new enemy. Now, the reason this combat is also extra fun is I do like the fact that all the weapons play so incredibly different. Now, instead of just having your standard souls, in Dark Souls style games, they give you runes or bloods or stuff like that, echoes. There's stuff that gives you straight stat increases. By killing enemies, you level up. That's not how this works here. Instead, in Hell Is Us, enemies don't respawn. You do. So if you go into a place that has like 10 enemies and you kill 9 of them and you die, you can come back and the other 9 are dead. You just got to finish off that one guy. I like that. But the reason they do that, I think, is that killing enemies levels up your weapons. And this to me is my favorite part of the combat by far, because it makes it where you can choose any weapon you want. Even if something has lower stats, lower attack, lower combo, I like the fact that I can level up a weapon I like the most. It will just naturally gain experience. And then when it gets capped, you can go to a blacksmith and imbue it for even more power. As each of these enemies you kill, you get these little shards and stuff that can be used to upgrade your defensive weapons and your offensive weapons. I like the fact that, honestly, when I'm playing this game, there's this really fun power creep of getting stronger and stronger and stronger, going to a new area, seeing crazy weird set pieces, and at the same time getting even better upgrade materials, so now I'm better prepared for that next boss. But this does bring me to what I consider the major downside to it. I think the gimmick of Hell Is Us, the lack of a quest log, the lack of objective markers, in a lot of sense, it is smart. I think it is cool to really have to try to figure stuff out, but in a lot of ways, it feels like it's trying to be purposefully vague for an extra sense of challenge that in a lot of ways just feels so unnecessary. Like one of the towns in Act 2, sometimes people will give you a map. When you find random people, sometimes they say, oh, go over here or follow the wind chimes. But sometimes people will give you a map you can actually put on your item select menu and glance at it. I spent 20 minutes in this town trying to find this next objective place, and while searching for it, they gave me a map. It's circled. The map is backwards. The map actually is to the side. North is to the right. So I legitimately spent so much time wandering this town before I noticed I was going the complete wrong direction. There are just a lot of things like this that require you to very much pay attention. A lot of puzzles in this game seem obvious at first, but then there's some twist to it. At one point, I had to try and find like this super long series of numbers. I found the numbers and I kept putting them into the keypad, knowing this is definitely where these numbers go. And it turned out that I missed an audio log where someone says, I've been dreaming in reverse, which means the numbers are backwards. I've also had times where I'm straight up trying to do like a puzzle and all right, I had to pull these levers and it makes these big cages open up. All right, I can do that. But it turns out that to get to the cages, to open these levers, I have to find these hidden paths. There's a lot of times where there's an extra step to a lot of puzzles that feels a bit egregious. It's not too far, but some of the puzzles, I feel like they designed them to be frustrating more than to be titillating, right? But let me talk more about the story and the world of Hadia, because this is something I think is something that, honestly, it is such a standout world. And honestly, I don't know what the budget for this was, but a lot of times this game is gorgeous. It's dark, it's twisted, it'll probably give some people nightmares, but it's just so beautiful in a way I didn't really expect, because Hadia, being isolated for so many years, it has this weird undiscovered country vibe to it. Times where you're walking next to a lake with all these beautiful glowing blue flowers, and you see a helicopter across that lake, and you think, what is that? Or times where you go into the next zone, and it's this smog-filled, burnt-out town, and you're just seeing rows and rows of torched cars going through the night to see these weird things off in the distance, towers, churches, religious figures that make no sense to you. There is such a complete vibe to this game that is absolutely immaculate. And in a lot of ways, I like how Rémi interacts with it. Rémi, during the course of this game, the game is already over. They show this during the opening cutscene, but it's him talking to people that have basically captured him in Hadia and have given him a truth serum and are forcing him to talk about all the secrets he's discovered. So the game is sort of like him talking about all the weirdness. But I like the fact that in a lot of ways, Rémi has this sense of reflection to a lot of his different statements, to a lot of his discoveries that I think really, really hit me deep. Like, this game is messed up. It's messed up in ways that I think people just aren't ready for. But I also really like the fact that as he figures out about his family and about this mystery and about these monsters, he seems to have a genuine sense of reverence for how mind-boggling all this is. I've got an analogy here. I wrote down at one point, about 20 hours in the game, I saw something so messed up and I said like this: the game is unnerving. It feels like that experience where, everybody at some point in their life is trying to take a shortcut. You're out for a walk, you see something and you go, oh, I bet I could get there if I cut under this bridge, or I zigzag through this construction site, or through this dark field. And when you start to take that shortcut, you realize, wait, am I lost? Am I screwed? Did I go somewhere I'm not supposed to go? I like the fact that Hell Is Us is perfectly the encapsulation of that feeling. I'm not sure I'm supposed to be here. I'm not sure I'm ready to be here. I'm just not sure for what's about to come. Now let's talk about the world. Not just the story, not just the combat, but just in general. I think the world of Hell Is Us, I'm excited to see what comes next. This game is so beautiful. It's so haunting. It's so fun that I gotta say that I like what this studio is trying to do. And honestly, I have no idea who made this. I want to see what they actually come up with next, because one of the things they have in here is a lot of side content. You could beat this game in probably about 18 hours if you're an actual badass, but they have all these extra sets of side objectives. There's time loops where you basically find all these little minions that are extra strong, kill all those minions, go into the time loop, and you can basically try to just sort of stop some sort of infinite enemy printer. Those are in each of the zones. There's a different time loop you can close. There's mysteries all over the place. You'll constantly find relics, items, notes that are purposely open-ended, and you can find them. A lot of the people you talk to have these big quest markers, all these extra optional things you can ask them to sort of figure out more about the area or the zone or the current next tier, stuff like that. But if you find particular mystery items, whether they are notepads or random car keys and stuff, you can sort of get people to tell you extra stuff that sometimes leads to big rewards. There's also good deeds. This is the side quest system. And I 90% love this. I kind of don't like the side quest system because good deeds don't always give you stuff, which sounds conceited, but my thing is the fact that good deeds are kind of vague. Like, just to make a non-spoiler thing, one of the early areas, there's a guy who lives on a farm. You're helping him out, you're killing some nearby monsters, and he starts to talk about his missing sons. He sort of says, I regret the fact that I got all mixed up in this. The Civil War is terrible. I know that 3 of my sons is dead. I wish I could find the 4th, right? Well, at one point you find a prison camp, you find his 4th son, right? And you get to talk to him and take a watch back to his dad to say, he's alive, I busted him out, he's alive. And it says, good deed complete. Some of the good deeds do lead to better weapons and armor, or extra relics, or extra stuff that makes you strong. I have to say that I don't like the fact that some good deeds are so difficult and seem to give nothing, and some good deeds are super easy peasy and give crazy, crazy rewards. The inconsistency to the payoff of mysteries, time loops, and these good deeds, maybe there's some vendor I never discovered, but I almost feel like this encapsulates what I love and hate about Hell Is Us. This game is good. It's real good. As a Souls fan, I feel like this is one that deserves your attention. But at the same time, I feel like it's purposely vague purposely obtuse, and purposely hard to understand for no real benefit. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad, but overall, definitely enjoyed it. But let's go over to the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Hell Is Us an 8.5 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please keep dreaming. This game was a doozy. You have no idea how many times I legit just stared at a puzzle and could not figure out what to do. And I mean that in a complimentary way. It's been a long time since I had a game that just felt so hard in like 10 different ways, and all 10 of those ways, I was like, hell yeah. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.